Can I start? The name is on. This is 228.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our post-event conference. It's a delight to have you all join us as usual. My name is Anne Eze. I'm Director of Communications and Events for the bank. And I know I see a couple of familiar names in the participant list, so thank you once again for joining us. Before we kick off with the press conference today, as usual, a few housekeeping rules. We have interpretation for those who would like to listen in French or in Arabic. Please just click on the widget at the bottom of your screen. You would see more, you would see interpretation, and select the channel that you would like. Right? There's French, there is English, and there is Arabic. As usual, also, we will have a running agenda. We will have our Executive Vice President for the Intra-Africa Trade Bank at Afreximbank, who will lead this conference with opening statements and opening remarks, talk about some key messages, and then, of course, go through some of the information we would like to share today. And then we'll open up for Q&A. For the questions, I think since this is a completely virtual session, we will ask you to go on the Q&A button and drop your questions in there. And during the Q&A session, we will pick them up and respond to them. There are some questions we have already received in anticipation, so we will start off with those, and then of course pick up from the Q&A chat room. With that said, again, a big thank you to those who joined us in person in Cairo for IATF 2023. As you can imagine, it was such a huge success, and I think it is a delight that we are back as promised right after the event to share some of the key successes and key performance indicators from the trade fair. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce and welcome on screen our Executive Vice President, Mrs. Kanayo Awani. Thank you very much.
No, I was talking to the mute. Yes, so I'm trying. I was saying that I welcome all of you to this media conference, and like Anne rightly said, we did promise I'll be back. If you recall, the numbers we gave you of the key performance indicators at the trade fair were inconclusive at that time, given that information was still rolling in. And what we'd like to do today is to give you those information, haven't done the necessary audits on those numbers. So if you don't mind, I'll just go right into it. In terms of participants that attended, both virtually and physically, we ended up at 28,282, 28282. I hope you all can see it on the screen as well. And in terms of number of exhibitors, I think we had announced 1,615 at the close of the trade fair. Following our audit, it was 1,939. We had actually targeted 1,600. Again, participating countries overall, so people who participated in one form or the other as exhibitors, buyers, delegates, visitors, speakers as well, we are 130. I think for that figure, we had a target of 75. And in terms of country pavilions and exhibition stands, 45 African countries had pavilions as countries and as corporates. Of those 45, 42 were actually African country pavilions. And then we had 16 non-African countries who were also represented, giving a total of 61 countries. And total trade and investment deals, which was the one item we couldn't announce at the end of IATF 2023, it came to $43.7 billion US. that's where we are. That's what we consider to be a report card. And from our own estimation and by the standards we set for ourselves, it was hugely successful because we exceeded many of the parameters, if not all, actually, and probably say for visitors that was marginally short. Thank you. So do we go to the questions?
Thank you, EVP. Absolutely. I think the first question was, can you highlight some of the key deals that were signed and the impact?
I don't have that question. Why you asking me? You have to start my video.
Apologies, visitors. I think we had a bit of a technical issue there. So I will just rephrase the question and repeat it for the benefit so that we can get back on track. So dear EVP, the question was, what are the key deals to highlight and what key programs can the continent look forward to?
I don't know how to turn on my video anymore. I don't know if I can get help so that I'm sorry, I'm struggling with my with the system. I'm trying to turn my video on. I don't know what to do. Where is the it's guy? I thought it was supposed to sit here. Can you call Sharif? Is it happening? Unless I can. I'm so sorry about that technical glitches. So the question was on the key deals that were closed. I'll just highlight one or two. We have the the framework agreement we signed for export agriculture in the context of food security, which was signed about $2 billion. And it involved Zimbabwe, Malawi, Chad, Egypt, and Afreximbank. The intention of this facility is to address the food insecurity issues in Africa, which also include the hunger rate of 20%. The idea being that countries like Zimbabwe and Malawi will be the the agricultural hub under a contract manufacturing scheme, contract agriculture scheme that will support countries like Egypt, and Chad will be for livestock as well. The other one I can speak to is the initiative we have around sub-sovereigns. The sub-sovereigns is organized around a network of subnational governments around the continent, especially those that have sufficient autonomy. So we had representatives from various countries, from their what we call governors in countries like Nigeria, or premiers in countries like South Africa, or in countries like Kenya, I think they are called premiers as well, in Kenya. And then we also had those from Egypt was also represented, and a few other countries that were represented. And we then arranged one of the initiatives is to see how we can finance the sub-sovereigns directly. And from coming out of that, we signed also a framework agreement to support certain sub-sovereigns in an amount, especially those in Nigeria, in an amount of 500 billion naira, which is about $500 million. The total package or ticket for this sub-sovereign financing is an amount of $2 billion. I guess the other one I'll talk about is I also speak to our industrialization interventions. And that was what we signed with the facility we signed with Arise, integrated platform, which is in an amount of about $1 billion. And that's to support industrial parks in various countries across Africa. I think I'll just leave it at those three for now.
Thank you very much, EVP. We have questions rolling in fast and furious, and I think maybe just a note to our guests on the call today that, as usual, you will get a very detailed, comprehensive press release post this session. So we'll go to Ivan Mugisha of the East African, who would like to know more about the bank's work in enabling African countries to develop conducive and competitive automotive laws and policies. For example, the president of Kenya is expected to soon sign the country's new automotive bill, while Ethiopia drafted a policy last week.
So under our automotive strategy, and we have three pillars. One of them is, we speak to what the question, Ivan's question, is policy advocacy and capacity building, and that's to see how we can advocate for proper policies around the automotive sector. And some of the things we're also doing, aside from the advocacy work, is also to support things like harmonization of standards in the automotive sector. We've supported a few countries like Ghana and Egypt in terms of also helping them review their automotive policies. The idea being to see that we have an enabling environment to support the automotive growth, automotive manufacturing and financing in Africa. But aside from also that, we also work with African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat to design an African automotive strategy. And that is being domesticated by various African countries. As part of that, what it then means is that, which is also part of our own internal strategy, is that that the automotive sector will have to support value chains. So it's pretty much like what is happening in the European industry for Airbus, where the countries came together and then split that Airbus equipment into various components that are manufactured by different continents. So France has I think the flight control and some part of the fuselage. And then I think maybe the UK has the wings and some other parts, and Germany has also other parts of the fuselage. That's the idea, so that a vehicle is broken into components with different components manufactured by different countries. And that's the value chain initiative that we have. We supported a value chain study as well, piloting the West Africa region. And now we are actually extending it to the rest of the continent. Our final pillar on the automotive strategy is financing. And of course, in all that we do, we also look to supporting the industry and the sector, all in the entire value chain components, from original equipment manufacturers to those who are manufacturing components, by financing them. I'll also talk about the work we're doing around the battery precursor, where we are developing, supported with, working with UNECA, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, to develop battery precursor packs, industrial packs for battery precursor and components in DRC and Zambia.
Thank you very much, EVP. Our next question is from Kuzanai Sharara, Business Weekly in Zimbabwe. In Durban, we announced a huge number of deals. Today, we have also announced $43 billion of signed deals. How does the bank keep track of these, and how have they fared?
No, we keep track of, we absolutely monitor these deals and track them. So what we do as a bank is that every deal that's been closed, of those, I think is almost 426 deals that we've announced today, for instance, in number, has an officer assigned to it. And that officer, it doesn't matter whether it is a financing deal or a non-financing deal or trade and investment deal, an officer monitors it and sees it to conclusion. Some of them are things that have to do with the bank's financing. They're also monitored. Those that are outside of the bank, they're also monitored. And we report on these monthly, and in terms of our own governance structures. In 2018, for instance, we closed, I think, $32.4 billion worth of deals in Egypt here. And we closed 75%. Our target for 2020, IATF2023, and that remains our target all across board, is to close at least 70% of those deals. And those deals are also being tracked. In fact, we use those numbers as part of our promotional activities down the line. We'll use them down the line as we prepare for IATF 2025.
Thank you very much, EVP. Our next question is from Mboma Mulikilena from Zambia Monitor. How significant is this third intra-Africa trade fair to the sub-Saharan African region in broadening access to financing? In particular, how important is this event in contributing to fast-tracking the implementation of the AFCFTA trade financing opportunities and options?
So the trade fair is while it is a platform to connect buyers and sellers, we are acutely aware that the contracts that are being negotiated or gone into or are being consummated by the buyers and sellers, investors and investors and those with the opportunities, have to be financed in some form or the other. Whether it is in financing, whether it is direct finance and funding, or whether it's even in de-risking, in risk-bearing instruments, and by that I mean guarantees. And that's why, as a bank, we always invite all DFIs, commercial banks on this continent, as well as non-bank financial institutions like those involved in insurance and those involved in guarantees, and even factoring companies, and even ECAs and Exim banks. The reason we do that is because we want to expand access to finance, and that the deals that are being consummated, especially in the context of intra-African trade, are financed. So in 2023, I think we invited over 500 of such banks to participate in the trade fair. And some of them were also participatory in the deals that were being done, and I think it's a huge platform for access to finance. It's not just a platform to grow intra-African trade, but it's definitely a platform for banks to grow access to finance. And our banks, I'm pleased to say that banks are seeing it as an opportunity, to also for business development and to get deals onto their books. We also, as you probably know, also announced the buyer program. We announced a number of programs at the trade fair, and those programs we announced was also to see how we can expose them to financial institutions, but also to use them as to support our financing interventions. We had the buyer program. The buyer program, out of that dedicated buyer program, where we sponsor buyers, as well as and attract buyers who read in a way to redirect them into buying made in Africa goods. So for those who who look for opportunities outside of the continent, we directed them to the trade fair to see what they can buy from that continent. And it's also pleasing to say that about 2 billion deals of what I've just announced came from that dedicated buyer program, which is about 157 of the deals announced. And that program also saw a lot of successes, and some of them are also being directed to us for financing. For instance, there's a central firm that used to buy polyvinyl chloride, or what you call vinyl, from China, and then found the market or find the suppliers in Egypt. And those transactions are being sent to us. We're also very huge in syndications, as you may know. We're probably ranked #1, according to Bloomberg, in syndications in this continent. And what that means is that as we attract deals, we're also able to bring in other financial institutions to join us in implementing those transactions.
Thank you very much, Ibi. I think we'll switch to questions from West Africa now. And Vivian Ihechu of News Agency of Nigeria has a question. What have been some of Afreximbank's investments in the pharmaceutical industry and health sector in general, aimed at strengthening the healthcare landscape on the continent? And to what extent have players in this sector been able to tap into the opportunities that the bank and IATF present?
A couple of things on the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry. One of the things that the bank has continued to champion is interventions in that area. People may know, because it's been in the news quite a while, about the African Medical Center of Excellence, which is AMC, which is one of our flagship initiatives under this, should I call it, healthcare sector, as well as medical tourism. The AMC is a quaternary hospital, 500 bed, that is being piloted in Nigeria, but is also being planned for the various regions, including Central Africa, North Africa, East Africa, as well in Southern Africa. So that hospital is under construction, and we're developing it in conjunction with the King's College Hospital. So aside from that hospital, we're also doing a couple of things in the pharmaceutical sector in terms of policy advocacy. Some of the things we're doing is the harmonization of standards in pharmaceuticals and medical consumables, where we've supported working with the African Standards Organization, where we've harmonized about over 200 standards in that sphere. An initiative that we started during the COVID in 2020, in the wake of COVID, where we realized that we had to harmonize standards in that sector to be able to deal with the issues of even things like PPEs, face masks, and what have you. In particular, the IATF, working with the Egyptian Council for Medical Industries, we facilitated a lot of meetings, again, through the buyer program. Statistics reaching us is that there were about 650 meetings involving Egypt and various African countries that around pharmaceuticals, around veterinary, medical supplies, devices, and cosmetics. And the African countries that were involved were Mauritius, Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Togo, Benin, Tanzania, Malawi, and Egypt. Aside from that, we'll continue to have our financing interventions. These are also sectors that we, as part of the plain vanilla business, for want of a better word, is that we continue to finance also pharmaceuticals. We deploy our services, which is credit, trade and project finance, We also deploy a risk-bearing instrument, which is guarantees, as well as our advisory services for all of these sectors. So we also do financing, and you also may know that we have we provide debt, which is Afrexim Bank. That's the work we do. But we also provide equity through Impact Equity Fund for Export Development in Africa. We also have a specialty insurance outfit we call Afrexim Insure, which handles managed services under insurance, as well as having a project preparation units where we deploy project preparation facilities that enables us to support transactions that are simply ideas and support them so that they can have studies and move them up to bankability. So these are deployed as part of our business. I don't talk a lot of them about financing because it is a run-of-the-mill business.
Thank you very much, EVP. I think the next question is going to get us to change gears a bit. This question is from Melanie Goodfellow, the Senior International Film Correspondent for Deadline. And it's about Afrexim Bank's $1 billion African Film Fund. And the question is, what is the name of the film that Afrexim Bank financed that premiered at the Toronto Film Festival?
So that's I Did Not Come to You by Chance. That's the film, one of the films we financed that premiered at the TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival.
Thank you very much. The other question we have here from Zoya, and I think it's one that is of interest to many of the journalists on the call today, is what makes this third Intra-Africa Trade edition unique or different from the previous editions?
The one thing I'll add is, apart from the fact that we've built on the successes of the previous editions, we continue to be dynamic about it, drawing from what is going on the continent, and the things that we need to support and to showcase, and also to expose for investment purposes. So aside from that, one of the things we've done, and one of the things we keep doing is that we keep raising the stakes higher, even in terms of our KPIs. But importantly, we also introduce new elements or new verticals, or new components to the trade fair. One of the things we introduced was under KENEX. We had some initiatives, which is one of them was a gastronomy, actually, culinary arts showcase. That was an interesting one. But we do not only just showcase this. The reason we showcase them is because the trade fair is not an end in itself. It's because we want to intervene meaningfully. But at the trade fair we showcased it. We brought in a number of chefs, to come and showcase what Africa has, and to see how we can begin to expose our gastronomy to the rest of the world as well. There was also interestingly that jollof rice was, continued to be a growing conversation, debates between Nigeria and Ghana in particular, as well as Senegal. Ghana won that war, but people have called for a rerun at IATF in 2025. So that was on the gastronomy. We also, as I mentioned, have other pillars of intervention for that specific sector, apart from showcasing them at the trade fair or showcasing them as KENEX. We also had in the sports sub-vertical of KENEX, we also introduced the freestyle football. That we also intend to popularize as part of our sports initiative under KENEX. It may interest people to know, or the media journalists to know, that our KENEX portfolio includes sectors such as film, music, arts and crafts, fashion, sports, and now gastronomy. So introduce that as part of our showcase. We also, as I already mentioned, introduced the Africa Buyers. It's always been there, but we gave it a bit of focus, the Africa Buyers program, because we do realize that for people to come and exhibit, there must be buyers to interact with. And that's one of the key successes of the trade fair, aside from the fact that we also introduced, and we also launched quite a number of other initiatives and there was an earlier question about financing. Some of those initiatives that we introduced involve financing. The Engineer, Procure, and Construct initiative that we also launched. It was a high-level launch, and championed by the government of Egypt as well. It's one of those initiatives to support investments flow, Africa direct investments, to see that Africans are investing in other African countries, that opportunities that we're seeing, especially in the $60 billion spend that is spent on infrastructure today, is also being taken advantage of by African EPC contractors, in a sense. And so we launched that initiative. We also launched what we call the tenders portal as part of our digital intervention to ensure that we capture those opportunities as they occur, and that information also filters, directly as to companies that have those capabilities, so that they can, bid and take advantage of those opportunities. Just as well, also we launched that transit guarantee scheme. That transit guarantee scheme is what will allow, just by way of description, goods to move in a manner of speaking, the much talked about Cairo to Cape Town on a road journey under a single technology-enabled transit bond. So we started piloting that a few years ago, that scheme in Commercial region with a financing ticket of $200 million, $300 million, I beg your pardon. And then for the continent at $1 billion with a mandate to increase it as transactions evolve. So those are some of the initiatives that we launched, that we introduced or relaunched, to be able to spotlight not just the opportunities also, but to see that people take advantage, to spotlight the financing that is available, for such transactions.
Thank you very much, EVP. A very robust response to what was indeed a very fantastic trade fair. Just to take you back on the numbers, we have one question here. Amira Said would like to know what the target was before the actual that we have shared today.
Okay, so the target for the deals, right?
Yes, for the deals.
The target for the deals was $43 billion. We just increased it a little bit over what Durban was, which was about 42. Durban closed about $42.6 billion. So our target was $43 billion, and we closed at 43. The actual number is actually $43.77 billion. If I were to round it up, I'll round it up to $43.8 billion.
Indeed. The one question we have from Cameroon Tribune, Junior Matlock, would like to know, the implementation of the African passport remains a handicap for business travelers on the continent. What is IATF doing to advance the implementation of this very important tool?
Now, as you can imagine, the IATF requires the implementation of that tool. And the conveners of the IATF, which is Afreximbank, the AFCFTA, Secretariat and African Union Commission, are interested in ensuring that it succeeds. But this is an initiative that is being driven and championed by the African Union Commission under the protocols on free movement of people and residency of people, of African people, and that is still being pursued, but as Afreximbank and as IATF, we support the initiative, because it also helps the interaction. Trade will occur and be enabled if people can move from one African, especially intra-African trade, if people can move from one African country to another to pursue business. I'll leave it at that, but it's an initiative that is being championed by the African Union Commission.
Thank you, EVP. We have one question around the choice of Algeria as the next host. I think we announced it that day. And the question is, can you share what criteria was used in the choice of Algeria?
Well, we didn't necessarily choose. After each trade fair, as we will soon do, we for the next cycle, we launch a request, for proposals to host the next trade fair. And that's what we did right after 2021 in Durban. I think, we launched a request for proposals that is usually circulated to ministers of trade, African ministers of trade, to participate and to indicate their interest and respond to the proposals. So in this particular case, 3 countries were shortlisted, but the criteria for selecting Algeria was around the infrastructure, the venue infrastructure, because one of the things we must have is the venue. The IATF has become very large in scale, as many of you who attended can see. You need around 40,000 square meters of exhibition space, just exhibition alone. And you also need the world-class conference facilities that we had. You also need a venue that will support all the side events. If you also where the gastronomy event held, that will support all the various creative events as well, and the various verticals of the trade fair. To do that, the infrastructure, the venue is very important. And it's not just a venue also, it's also the things like the accommodation, the number of beds, that are in that country, the number of hotels, the capacity of the hotels, and all the ecosystem that can support a trade fair. And that's what, drove after the evaluation committee. There's always an evaluation. People may know that we have an advisory council of the Intra-African Trade Fair that has a number of member countries in there, development partners, and some influential individuals that are members. And then there's a selection committee is drawn from that advisory council. It includes other financial institutions, international organizations, development agencies, and some influential Africans. And a selection committee that is drawn then does the assessments, including due diligence on site and hold meetings with the stakeholders in every country before they arrive at that decision. That is then presented to advisory council and endorsed. Sometimes the advisory council will ask for interviews with the key stakeholders in those countries. So that's in a nutshell the process that we go through. But the critical drivers are things like, what is the space like? What kind of space do you have? What is the venue infrastructure that is there? What are the things that require is an IATF of this scale, of this magnitude to succeed locally? Is it available? And that's how come we ended up with Nigeria, aside from the fact that they applied.
Thank you very much, EBP. I'm conscious of the time, but I cannot not ask this next question. It's from Yomna Yasser and Nada Ali from Amwal Algad English. And it's twofold. One, you have been named among the 100 leading Nigerian women in 2022, and also been among Forbes Africa's list of the 50 most influential women in 2023, amongst many other accolades. What is your secret for success and your advice to women in Africa to have bigger impact? And there is also, I think, a follow-on, which is what role can African women play to fill the trade gap in Africa?
I need to write it there. Let me put it this way, and thank you for those kind words and the recognition. Well, I work at an institution that also supports me and supports women. That's first thing, so, and I also work under leadership that is visionary. So it won't be right to claim all the glory, and I also particularly also work in a team of hardworking Africans, as I continue to say, who show up every day to fight for the soul of the economic soul of our continent. So it is the organization that I work for in Afrexim Bank, and the support that we have from our board and shareholders that gives us the impetus to be nimble enough and agile enough to implement the strategies that we do, which is bold, courageous. We ask ourselves every day we show up to work, if not us, who? And if not now, when? So personally for me, I key into that vision, and I come up with, I would summarize to say it is hard work. It's those kind of events that we hold comes out of a lot of hard work. team play, and as well as, it will be remiss of me not to mention it, that as I tell my colleagues, as many times on the journey, I don't know where else to go but on my knees, on my faith, so it all sums up what we do, the hard work, the tenacity to achieve, be courageous and bold. And as women, sometimes we are also flat-footed and backbenchers, but to raise your hand to be counted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, EVP. And I think we're going to stop at 45, but we have kind of run over a bit. I would say we have received so many questions. I think we still have a running list of about 35 questions in the chat room. My proposal, this is what we're going to do. For many of the questions are also very country specific. So what we'll do is respond to you if it's a particular question on Egypt or South Africa or Nigeria, or I think we saw another one on Kenya. We'll send you the responses directly. I think we wanted to leave this forum for more regional, broad-based, far-reaching questions and responses. But rest assured that for those very specific country questions, we will send you the questions directly. I think you are all on our database, so we'll be emailing you directly with those questions. And so I think in that regard, I would say a very big thank you to everyone who has taken the time to join. Thank you for your questions, for your collaboration. Thank you for continuing to help us spread the message about intra-Africa trade in Africa and supporting the mission and vision of the bank. I will hand over to EVP Kanayo for a last word.
No, there's no last one. I hope this thing has stopped again. There's no last one, and I hope I talked about everything that I consider keys to my success. But the important one that I think I missed out is the support of my family, my husband and 2 lovely kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much, EVP, and thank you, everyone. And on that note, we will wrap this session. And of course, feel free to reach out to myself, to my team members, Amabwa, Deborah Ross, Tracy Debbie, and all of us. For those who are not on the WhatsApp group, you can just reach out to me. We'll add you and continue to take your questions and offer responses as required. Thank you very much.